What crazy world we live in, guys. If you look at it, we're trying to be all inclusive with a lot of movement, association, resource group to promote everybody is equal pretty much. But at the same time, the society is so divided. So here in this video, I want to give you some perspective, not just in the US, but mostly from abroad and from history. So if this is something you're interested in, please keep watching. And if you like it, give it a like. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. But yes, if you look at it, you have all these movements that have been happening for already quite a few years in the US. Black Lives Matter being the most well known, but it's not the only one. You have associations, business resource group, even at work. I mean, they promote the Latino community, Asian, Army vet, LGBTs, you name it. There's pretty much a group for any minority or group not feeling well represented. All this to promote equality between everybody else. So all good incentives here, good objectives. But if you look at it at the same time, we've never been so divided as a society, not just based on all these different color of your skin, race, and so on, but also based on how much you have, pretty much where you stand in society, because the poor are getting poorer and the richer are getting richer. And the middle class that we used to have, that was a pretty big middle class, is shrinking, with just a few making it to the top elite and a lot being pushed at the bottom. And with the inflation that we see here, it's happening at a very fast pace. People that were middle class and were fighting to, had worked very hard to be middle class, to be able to afford a few things and live not a wealthy, but a good life, are now just pushed down because they cannot make it anymore. So we see all this reduction of the middle class pushed down to what could be qualified as poor, just because of what's happening in the last few months, year. But what we see here in the US is happening everywhere around the planet, pretty much, and has been happening already for years if you look at some countries. And here I want to look south. I want to look at South America, because that has been happening there for quite a few years. I mean, it's not years, we're talking 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, look at the example of Brazil and all the favelas that have been there for many, many years. You go to the big cities and you see very wealthy neighborhood, but you cross the street, you have the favelas, which are pretty much cities within the cities, where the law doesn't apply. Even sometimes the police is afraid of going into these favelas, which are full of crimes and other issues. It's been a bit more recent in Argentina, because the country seems to have declined very fast in the last 20 years, but before it had actually a pretty good middle class up to the year 2000, where they stopped the one-on-one with the dollar and the economy went down to the ground pretty much. But before that, they had that good middle class and not that much poverty in the city. But starting in 2000, you've seen this favela, which they don't call favela over there, it's villa, but it's the same. It's this poor neighborhood, which are cities across inside the city, and you have a huge one that developed just on the other side of the rail track from one of the richest neighborhood in Buenos Aires, for instance. And that city within the city has their own electric system that they hooked up to the grid. I mean, they did everything on their own pretty much. It's a city within the city, operating with their own rules. And that's been already 20 plus years, with side jobs that have been created around that economy in the city. Is that the way where we're going here? When you see the migration movements, look at Austin in Texas, with all the homeless that were living under the bridge that they had to remove. I mean, this is happening here in the US, and it's happening faster nowadays. And let's take another example here, and I'm going to take one from my home country, which is France. We just had presidential elections. So that was April. The system is different in terms of elections back home. You can have many candidates as long as they have 500 approval from local mayors. So we had about 12 that made it to the election. Very different backgrounds. From the right, from the left. We don't call Republican and Democrat. It's pretty much the right is more Republican, the left is a bit more Democrat, if you put it this way. But it was all over the board. Some extreme right, extreme left. You even had a shepherd from the Pyrenees Mountains. Very nice guy, actually. I liked him. We didn't get much votes, but all over the place. What happened is that the top three candidates here were the running president, Macron, the extreme right candidate, Marine Le Pen, and the extreme left candidate, Jean-Luc Mélenchon. So what you see here is the middle. Okay, you have one candidate, but then you see the rise of the extremes. The extreme right, which pretty much preach against the European Union. They were more pro-Russian than Ukraine, I think. There were a lot of debates here on which way they were standing on that. And they want to kick all the migrants out, all the illegal migrants out of France, without a clear plan on how to do it. That's a key thing, but that's their intention. So that's kind of, the tense here. And then on the extreme left, it's very, very social, let's put it this way. If to compare with the US, Bernie Sanders was probably soft compared to that extreme left. So, but this is what's rising here. And that was the presidential election. We just had the legislative, which is the parliament that follows the presidential election here. And what you would expect is the president who just won to win the parliament and have the majority. And it's very tight. It's not close to the majority right now, just because the extreme left was very smart and tried to partner with a lot of other leftist groups, like the Greens for the environment and so on. So they will partner all together, and he actually got a lot of votes. So you saw the rise here of the extreme left, up to the seat here representing the French abroad, North America, which is usually pretty on the right side, Republican, where he ended up being in the tight race, the extreme left, with the person representing the current president, who actually won here, which was pretty obvious given the population of expatriates here in the US and Canada. But it just shows you how the society is evolving here, with the extremes really rising here and the middle going down, and the usual parties that we used to have, which was a right party no longer existing, a left party no longer making it. They got less than 5% at the presidential election. That's nothing. These guys used to win in the past. It was either one of these two. And so you got Macron kind of in the middle, trying to make it, and it's a complete change in society, a complete change. And you see the cleavage even more when you look at that. The country that probably has the most cleavage as such, and it goes back from hundreds of years, if not 1,000 years of history, is India, if you look at it. It's very extreme over there because everybody's in a caste, and you're born in a caste depending on what your parents do, and you stay in that caste for your whole life. So you pretty much, your destiny is you have what you have. For instance, your dad is a carpenter. Well, you're born and you will become a carpenter, just to give you an example. And with extreme difference, as you might know, between the rich and the poor in India, with so many homeless living on the street. But that's very extreme, and a completely different mindset. It's a bit of a different world here, because a lot of people accept it. That's the way they were born, the way they were raised. It's a very different mindset. But that's really the extreme, just to give you some perspective of what's going on. But I think South America is a very good illustration of where it can lead when you have economical problems and very high inflation, because that's what's happening right now in South America, in particular if you look at Argentina. We're talking 60% inflation right now in Argentina. That's what we call hyperinflation. And this is not the only country. I mean, Turkey is in the same place. You have some in Africa as well. I mean, it's happening all over the world. So just to put some perspective here on where we are and where we might be heading if we don't control what's going on in the economy soon enough. So I hope you found this useful. Not a very cheerful message, I'm afraid, but this is the reality of the world we live in. So just be prepared. Thank you all for watching, guys.